The kitchen faucet had been dripping for 3 weeks straight. One of those slow, methodical drops that somehow managed to echo through the entire house at 2 in the morning. I'd been meaning to fix it, but between work deadlines and Lauren's increasingly strange behavior, home maintenance had taken a back seat. I was elbow deep in the cabinet under the sink, flashlight between my teeth, when I heard her footsteps on the hardwood. Quick, nervous steps, not her usual confident stride. "David," she said, voice shaking. "I need to tell you something." I pulled my head out from under the sink and looked at her. Lauren stood in the doorway wearing that blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. Her hands were trembling, and her face had gone pale. In 12 years of marriage, I'd seen her nervous, maybe twice. This was different. "Can it wait 5 minutes? I'm almost done with this pipe." "No." She stepped into the kitchen, wrapping her arms around herself. "It can't wait." Something in her tone made me set down my wrench. I stood up, wiping my hands on my jeans, and really looked at her. The woman I'd married at 25, who used to laugh at my terrible jokes and steal fries from my plate, looked like she was about to throw up. "What's wrong?" She took a deep breath, the kind people take before jumping off a cliff. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between us. For a moment, I felt something that might have been joy. We'd talked about kids for years, always saying someday and when we're ready. Maybe this was good news delivered badly. I started, then stopped. Her expression wasn't happiness or excitement or even fear. It was guilt, pure, devastating guilt. "Lauren, that's wonderful. Why do you look like someone just sentenced you to prison?" She closed her eyes. "It's not yours." The kitchen went quiet, except for that infuriating drip from the faucet. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline or the explanation that would make this make sense. When neither came, I sat down hard in one of our kitchen chairs. "What do you mean it's not mine?" "I mean..." She opened her eyes, and I saw tears starting to form. "I mean, the baby isn't yours, David. I've been seeing someone else." The practical part of my brain, the part that solved engineering problems for a living, started working through the logistics. "How long?" 6 months. "Who?" She was quiet for so long I thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Marcus. Marcus. My half-brother Marcus. The guy who'd crashed on our couch for 2 months last year when his startup failed. The guy who borrowed money for his car payment and never paid it back. The guy who'd eaten our food, used our Netflix password, and apparently screwed my wife." "Marcus," I repeated, just to make sure I'd heard correctly. "I'm 11 weeks along. It happened at the Marriott downtown on March 15th, and again at that little place on Elm Street on March 22nd, and once more at the Holiday Inn on April 3rd. The clinical precision of her confession was almost worse than the betrayal itself. She'd memorized the dates, the locations. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a drunken mistake. This was a pattern. "You kept a calendar?" I needed to be sure about the timing. I laughed. Actually laughed. The sound came out harsh and bitter, echoing off the kitchen walls. "You needed to be sure. Of course. Can't have any ambiguity when you're destroying someone's life." "David, please..." "Please what?" I stood up, pacing to the window and back. "Please understand? Please forgive you? Please pretend this is all some big misunderstanding?" Before she could answer, I heard the front door open. Heavy footsteps in the hallway, the sound of someone who belonged here. Marcus appeared in the kitchen doorway, suitcase in hand, wearing that smug expression I'd learned to hate over the years. "She told you," he said. It wasn't a question. "Get out of my house." He set down his suitcase and crossed his arms. "Actually, we need to talk about that. We need to talk about you getting out of my house before I call the police." "David, be reasonable." Marcus stepped into the kitchen like he owned it. "This situation isn't ideal for anyone, but we need to think about what's best for the child. The child that isn't mine." "Exactly." He nodded like I just agreed with him. "Lauren and I have been discussing this, and we think it would be best if you let us have the house. For stability, for the baby." I looked between them, my wife and my brother, standing in my kitchen like they were negotiating a business deal. Lauren had stopped crying. Her face had gone hard, determined. This wasn't guilt anymore. This was a plan. "You want my house?" "It's the family home," Marcus said. "It makes sense for the family to stay here." The family home. My grandfather had built this place in 1952. I'd inherited it when my parents moved to Florida 5 years ago. Every board, every nail, every memory was mine. And they wanted it for their bastard child. "How long have you two been planning this?" Lauren and Marcus exchanged a look, a quick, guilty glance that told me everything I needed to know. It's not like that, Lauren said. It's exactly like that. I walked to the kitchen counter and leaned against it, studying them both. You didn't just have an affair, you had an affair and then sat down and figured out how to profit from it. You planned this whole thing. We're trying to do the right thing, Marcus said. The right thing would have been not screwing my wife. He shrugged. What's done is done. Now we need to move forward. I stared at him. My half-brother, 2 years younger, who'd spent his entire adult life failing at everything he touched. His restaurant had folded within 6 months. His consulting business never had a single client. His last girlfriend had left him for his own roommate, and now he stood in my kitchen, demanding my house, carrying my wife's child. You know what? I said finally. You're right. They both blinked, clearly not expecting agreement. We do need to think about what's best for the child. And what's best is stability, like you said. A real home, not some apartment you'll get evicted from in 3 months. Marcus's jaw tightened. I'm not going to get evicted. Sure you're not. I pushed off from the counter and walked toward the hallway. Give me a week to think about it, to figure out the logistics. David, Lauren called after me, where are you going? To my workshop, to think. I left them standing in the kitchen and walked out to the converted garage where I kept my tools and drafting table. The space where I'd designed half the bridges in this county, where I'd solved problems that seemed impossible until you broke them down into manageable pieces. This was just another engineering problem. Force, leverage, load-bearing capacity, every structure had weak points. You just had to know where to apply pressure. I opened the old safe in the corner, the one my father had installed when I was a kid. Inside were the original deed papers for the house, my grandfather's will, and a few other documents I'd inherited along with the property, including the paperwork for the LLC I'd set up 3 years ago for tax purposes. Calder Holdings, a perfectly legal entity that existed mostly on paper, designed to hold assets and minimize tax liability. I'd never actually used it for anything significant. Until now. I pulled out my phone and called my lawyer. Jim, it's David Calder. I need you to transfer some property into my LLC, tonight if possible. 3 days later, I sat across from Jim Morrison in his downtown office, signing papers that would change everything. The deed transfer was clean, legal, and completely binding. As of that morning, Calder Holdings owned my house. David Calder was just a tenant. You sure about this? Jim asked, watching me initial the last page. This is pretty unusual. Business restructuring, I said. Tax advantages. He didn't look convinced, but he notarized the documents anyway. Jim had handled my family's legal work for 20 years. He knew better than to ask too many questions. I drove home with the papers in my briefcase, feeling something like satisfaction for the first time in days. Lauren and Marcus were in the living room when I walked in, sitting close together on the couch like teenagers. They sprang apart when they saw me. David, Lauren said, we were just talking about... I've made a decision? I set my briefcase on the coffee table and opened it. You can have the house? Marcus leaned forward, eyes lighting up. Really? Really? I pulled out a folder and handed it to him. Rental agreement. 6 months, no charge. Consider it my gift to the baby. Lauren took the folder and flipped through it. This is very generous. I'm a generous guy. She looked up at me, searching my face for sarcasm or hidden meaning. I kept my expression neutral, helpful even. The devoted husband trying to do right by his cheating wife and her unborn child. Where will you go? She asked. I'll figure something out. Maybe rent a place downtown, closer to work. Marcus was reading over her shoulder, nodding along with the terms. Standard rental language, security deposit waived, utilities included. Everything looked perfectly reasonable. There's just one thing, I said. I need to update some insurance policies. Life insurance, homeowner's coverage, standard stuff when there's a change in living situation. Of course, Lauren said quickly. Whatever you need. I spent the next hour moving my clothes and personal items into the spare bedroom, playing the part of the displaced husband. Lauren watched from the doorway, guilt written across her face. David, I want you to know this isn't easy for me either. I'm sure it's not. I never meant for it to happen this way. I folded a shirt and placed it in my suitcase. But it did happen this way. We could try counseling, work through this together. I stopped packing and looked at her. You're 11 weeks pregnant with my brother's baby. What exactly would we work through? She didn't have an answer for that. That evening, I drove to Murphy's Tavern on the other side of town, the kind of place where nobody asked questions and the beer was cold. I found a booth in the back and ordered a whiskey, neat. Rough day? The bartender was a woman in her 40s with graying hair and kind eyes. Her name tag read Diane. You could say that? She wiped down the bar and glanced around the mostly empty room. Want to talk about it? My wife is pregnant with my brother's baby. Diane paused mid-wipe. Well, that's not something you hear every day. They want me to give them my house so they can play happy family. And you're going to do it? Already did. She studied my face. You don't look like a pushover. I'm not. Then why give them what they want? I took a sip of whiskey and felt it burn down my throat. Sometimes the best way to win a game is to let your opponent think they're winning. Diane nodded slowly. You're playing a longer game. Something like that. I spent the next 2 weeks establishing my new routine. I rented a small apartment downtown, close to my office. I moved my remaining belongings out of the house, making a show of how difficult the transition was. I even stopped by a few times to pick up mail, always looking defeated and apologetic. Lauren and Marcus settled into domestic life with disturbing ease. They repainted the guest room that would become the nursery. They hosted dinner parties for Lauren's friends, showing off their new arrangement. Marcus even started talking about putting in a hot tub. For therapeutic purposes, he explained when I stopped by to collect some old tax documents, Lauren's back has been bothering her. Pregnancy will do that, I said mildly. I was in my old workshop, gathering some tools, when I noticed something interesting. A stack of papers on Marcus's makeshift desk, partially hidden under a magazine, insurance documents. I recognized the letterhead from our family's insurance company. When they weren't looking, I took a closer look. Life insurance policy, $2 million. Lauren Calder, primary beneficiary. Marcus Oren, secondary beneficiary. The policy had been changed 8 months ago. 8 months, before the affair supposedly started, before the pregnancy, before any of this began. I photographed the documents with my phone and put them back exactly where I'd found them. Then I finished gathering my tools and said goodbye to my loving wife and devoted brother. That night, I sat in my apartment with a bottle of beer and my laptop doing some research. The timeline Lauren had given me was very specific. March 15th, 22nd, April 3rd. All dates when Marcus claimed to be traveling for business. I had access to Marcus's credit card statements through our shared family business account. He'd been buying gas and meals locally on all 3 dates. No hotel charges, no airline tickets, no evidence of any travel at all. The affair story was a lie. Not the affair itself, probably, but the timing. The careful documentation, the precise dates and locations. I opened a new browser window and logged into Lauren's cloud storage account. We'd shared passwords for years, one of those married couple conveniences that nobody thinks about until it becomes useful. Her text messages were automatically backed up. I scrolled through months of conversations with her sister, her friends, her coworkers, looking for anything about Marcus, about pregnancy, about their plans. I found it in a conversation with her sister from 6 weeks ago, before she'd told me anything. I'm going to tell him tonight, Lauren had written. We've been over the story 100 times. March 15th at the Marriott, March 22nd on Elm Street, April 3rd at the Holiday Inn. Marcus will show up right after with his suitcase. David will be so shocked he won't think to question the details. Her sister had responded, Are you sure this will work? It has to work. We need that house, and the insurance money if something happens to David. I stared at the screen for a long time, reading the conversation over and over. They'd planned everything, the confession, the timeline, Marcus's perfectly timed arrival, even the specific hotels, chosen because they'd be hard for me to verify quickly. But they'd made mistakes. Marcus's credit card records, the insurance policy changed too early, text messages that revealed the truth. I finished my beer and opened my laptop's calculator. $2 million in life insurance. The house worth about $340,000. Marcus's debts, which I knew about from our business partnership, totaling roughly $50,000. They weren't just stealing my life, they were positioning themselves to profit from my demise. I picked up my phone and called Detective Ray Orrick, an old friend from high school who worked for the county sheriff's department. Ray, it's David Calder. I need a favor. Detective Orrick met me at a diner outside town the next morning. We'd played football together in high school, back when the world made sense and your biggest worry was passing algebra. Now he was investigating insurance fraud, and I was planning revenge against my own family. This is a hell of a situation, he said, stirring sugar into his coffee. You sure about all this? I slid the printed screenshots across the table. Text messages, credit card records, insurance documents. They've been planning this for months. Ray studied the papers, his cop face giving nothing away. The insurance thing is interesting. changing beneficiaries 8 months before the affair supposedly started. They wanted me gone, Ray. This whole pregnancy story is just a backup plan. Maybe. He folded the papers and handed them back. But wanting someone gone and actually doing something about it are different things. What would you do? He was quiet for a moment, looking out the diner window at the parking lot. Officially, I'd tell you to file for divorce and let the lawyers sort it out. And unofficially? Unofficially? He grinned. I'd want to see them get what they deserve. Ray agreed to keep an eye on things, maybe run some background checks on Marcus's recent activities. Nothing official, just a friend looking out for a friend. In return, I promised to keep him informed of any developments. I spent the rest of the week setting up the next phase of my plan. The rental agreement I'd given Lauren and Marcus was legitimate, but it had some interesting clauses buried in the fine print. Standard landlord protections, mostly, but with a few additions that might prove useful later. More importantly, I started documenting everything. Every conversation, every interaction, every suspicious behavior. I installed security cameras around the property, ostensibly to protect my investment as a landlord. Lauren and Marcus didn't object. Why would they? They had nothing to hide. On Friday afternoon, I got a call from Marcus. David, we need to talk. What about? Business stuff. Can you meet me at the house tonight? I agreed, curious about what new scheme he'd cooked up. I arrived at 7 to find him waiting in what used to be my living room, papers spread across the coffee table. I've been thinking about our partnership, he said without preamble. The consulting business. What about it? I think we should expand, take on bigger projects, maybe get into property development. I sat down across from him, studying the documents. Loan applications, business plans, financial projections, all requiring my signature as the senior partner. This is a lot of money, Marcus. That's how you make money. You have to spend money. $300,000 is more than spending money. It's a mortgage. He leaned forward, putting on his best salesman smile. Think about it, David. Lauren and the baby are going to need security. This could set us all up for life. Us all. We're family. We take care of each other. I flipped through the paperwork, noting the collateral requirements. The house, my personal assets, even my retirement account. If the business failed, I'd lose everything. I need time to think about it. Of course, but don't take too long. These opportunities don't last forever. I left him with the papers and drove back to my apartment, mind racing. Marcus wasn't content with stealing my wife and my house. He wanted my financial future too, and if his track record was any indication, he'd run the business into the ground within a year. That weekend, I paid a visit to my sister Jennifer in the next county. She'd never liked Marcus, even when we were kids. Something about his entitled attitude and tendency to blame everyone else for his failures. He's trying to get you to invest in another one of his schemes? She asked, pouring coffee in her kitchen. $300,000 this time. David, you can't be serious. I'm not signing anything, but I want to understand what he's really after. Jennifer sat down across from me, her expression serious. He's after everything, David. He always has been. Ever since Dad remarried and brought Marcus into the family, he's been jealous of what you have. I never thought of it that way. You were too nice to see it, but I watched him growing up. He resented that you got the house when Grandpa passed. He resented that you had a stable career while he bounced from one failure to another. He resented that you married Lauren. So he decided to take her, and everything else. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. What are you going to do? I'm going to give them exactly what they want. David, trust me, Jen. I know what I'm doing. Monday morning, I called Marcus and told him I'd decided to sign the loan documents. We met at the bank, where I played the part of the reluctant but supportive brother. I asked questions, expressed concerns, but ultimately put my signature on every page. The loan officer, a middle-aged woman named Patricia, walked us through the terms. The collateral structure is quite comprehensive, she noted. Are you comfortable with the personal guarantees, Mr. Calder? Family business, I said. We're all in this together. Marcus beamed. That's right. All in this together. What Marcus didn't know was that I'd spent the previous day moving my personal assets into the LLC, my savings, my retirement accounts, even my car. Legally, David Calder was nearly broke. The loan documents he'd just signed made him personally responsible for a debt that could only be satisfied by assets he no longer owned. That evening, Lauren cooked dinner for the three of us. A celebration, she called it, to new beginnings. We sat around my grandfather's dining room table, eating off my grandmother's china, toasting with wine glasses I'd received as wedding gifts. The irony was almost too perfect. "I have an announcement," Lauren said, raising her glass of sparkling cider. "I went to the doctor today. We're having a girl." Marcus grinned and squeezed her hand. "A little girl." "That's wonderful," I said. "Have you picked out names?" "We're thinking about Grace," Lauren said. "Grace Orrin." Grace Orrin, not Grace Calder. They weren't even pretending anymore. "Beautiful name," I said. "Grace means unmerited favor, doesn't it?" Lauren nodded, missing the irony entirely. After dinner, I helped clean up, playing the supportive ex-husband and uncle-to-be. When I was ready to leave, Lauren walked me to the door. "David, I want you to know how much this means to us. Your understanding, your support. It can't be easy. I just want everyone to be happy." She hugged me, and for a moment I remembered why I'd fallen in love with her 12 years ago, before the lies, before the betrayal, before she'd decided my life was worth more than my marriage. "You're a good man," she whispered. "I try to be." I drove home that night thinking about timing. Marcus's business loan would fund within a week. The rental agreement had another 4 months to run. Lauren's pregnancy would start showing soon, making the whole charade more real, more sympathetic. But I'd learned something important over the past few weeks. Patience was a weapon. The longer you waited, the more your opponents revealed about themselves, the more mistakes they made. And Lauren and Marcus were making plenty of mistakes. I pulled into my apartment complex and sat in the car for a moment, looking up at the windows of my temporary home. Soon, I thought. Very soon, everyone would get exactly what they deserved. 2 weeks into Marcus's business venture, I received an interesting phone call. Patricia from the bank, the loan officer who'd processed our paperwork. "Mr. Calder, I'm calling about some irregularities in your partner's account activity." "What kind of irregularities?" "Large cash withdrawals, transfers to offshore accounts, the kind of activity that raises red flags in our fraud detection system." I wasn't surprised. Marcus had never been good with money, and having access to $300,000 was like giving a gambling addict the keys to a casino. "What do you need from me?" "We'd like you to come in and review the account activity. As the primary guarantor, you have the right to monitor all transactions." I met with Patricia that afternoon and reviewed Marcus's spending over the past 2 weeks. $50,000 to something called International Business Solutions, $20,000 in cash withdrawals, $15,000 to a company that appeared to be based in the Cayman Islands. "What is International Business Solutions?" I asked. Patricia pulled up the company information on her computer. "It appears to be a consulting firm, but we can't verify their actual business operations. The address is a P.O. box in Delaware." "And the Cayman Islands company?" "Even less information available. Could be legitimate, could be a shell company for money laundering." I thanked Patricia and drove home with copies of all the transaction records. Marcus wasn't just bad with money, he was doing something actively suspicious with it, possibly illegal. That evening, I called Ray Orrick. "Remember that favor I asked for? I think I've got something for you." We met at the same diner, and I showed him the bank records. Ray's expression grew more serious as he flipped through the pages. "This is federal territory," he said finally. "Money laundering, possible tax evasion. The FBI would be very interested in this." "What's the timeline on something like that?" "Depends on how deep they want to dig. Could be weeks, could be months." "And in the meantime?" "In the meantime, your brother-in-law keeps spending money that's technically yours." I leaned back in the booth thinking, what if someone were to tip off the IRS about suspicious business activity? That someone would be performing their civic duty. And if that same someone happened to have documentation of insurance fraud and staged adultery? Ray smiled. That someone would be very popular with law enforcement. I filed the reports the next day. IRS, FBI Financial Crimes Division, and the State Insurance Fraud Unit. I provided documentation, timelines, and detailed explanations of everything I'd discovered. Then I sat back and waited. While the wheels of justice turned slowly, I focused on the more immediate problem. Lauren and Marcus were getting comfortable in their new life, but they were also getting careless. I'd been monitoring the security cameras around the house, ostensibly to protect my property investment. What I saw was interesting. Regular visitors during the day while I was at work. Men in expensive suits, driving luxury cars, having intense conversations with Marcus in the backyard. I recognized one of them. Tommy Ricci, a local businessman with rumored connections to organized crime. Not the kind of person you wanted as a business partner unless your business was washing money or moving illegal goods. I started taking long lunch breaks, parking across the street from the house with a telephoto lens. The photos I captured showed Marcus handing envelopes to his visitors, receiving packages, conducting what looked like drug deals or worse. Whatever business Marcus thought he was in, it wasn't consulting. 3 weeks after filing the federal reports, I got a call from Agent Sarah Chen at the FBI. "Mr. Calder, we'd like to talk to you about your business partner." "Of course. When and where?" "How about tomorrow morning, our field office downtown?" The FBI building was exactly what you'd expect. Gray, imposing, filled with serious people in serious suits. Agent Chen was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. "We've been investigating Marcus Oren for several months," she said, settling into a conference room chair. "Your reports filled in some missing pieces." "What kind of investigation?" "Money laundering, primarily. He's been moving cash for some very unsavory people. The business loan you co-signed appears to be funding the operation." "So, I'm financially responsible for a criminal enterprise." "In a manner of speaking, yes. But we're more interested in your cooperation than your liability." Agent Chen outlined their plan. They wanted to use the business loan as leverage, freezing the accounts and forcing Marcus into a position where he'd have to cooperate with their investigation. In exchange, they'd minimize my legal exposure and help me recover any stolen assets. "What about my wife?" "What about her?" "She's involved in this. The insurance fraud, the staged affair. She's as guilty as Marcus." Agent Chen consulted her notes. "The insurance issue is a civil matter unless we can prove intent to commit harm. The adultery is personal business. Our focus is on the financial crimes." "So she gets away with it." "She gets away with the federal charges. What happens in divorce court is up to you and your lawyer." I agreed to cooperate with the FBI investigation. They'd monitor the house, document Marcus's criminal activities, and build a case that would put him away for a long time. In return, I'd maintain the pretense of being an innocent partner until they were ready to make arrests. It was almost too easy. That weekend, I stopped by the house to check on things. Lauren was in the kitchen, her pregnancy starting to show, looking domestic and content. Marcus was in the backyard, grilling burgers and talking loudly on his phone. "How's business?" I asked him when he finished his call. "Great, really great. We're expanding faster than I expected." "That's wonderful. What kind of clients are you working with?" "Import-export stuff. International trade consulting, very lucrative." "I'm sure it is." Lauren joined us on the patio, carrying a pitcher of lemonade. "David, you look tired. Are you taking care of yourself?" "Just working hard, trying to stay busy." "You should come to dinner more often. We're still family, after all." Family. The word had lost all meaning over the past few months. These people had stolen my life, planned my demise, and were now using my money to fund criminal activities. But they still wanted to play house, to pretend we were all just one big happy family. "I'd like that," I said. "Maybe next week?" "Perfect. I'll cook that roast you like." I spent another hour with them, playing the supportive ex-husband and business partner. When I left, Marcus walked me to my car. "David, I want you to know how much I appreciate everything you've done. The house, the business loan, your understanding about Lauren. Not many men would be so generous." "We're brothers," I said. "Family takes care of family." He clapped me on the shoulder. "Exactly. Family first." I drove away thinking about family, about loyalty and betrayal, and about the difference between relatives by biology and the people who truly stand by you. Marcus was right about one thing. Family did come first. He just didn't understand which family I was protecting. Agent Chen called me on a Tuesday morning in early October. "We're ready to move. Can you meet us this afternoon?" The FBI field office was busier than before, agents moving with the focused energy that comes before a major operation. Chen led me to the same conference room, where a dozen files were spread across the table. "We've documented over $2 million in suspicious transactions," she said, pointing to bank records and surveillance photos. "Money laundering, tax evasion, conspiracy to commit fraud. Marcus is looking at 15 to 20 years. When do you arrest him?" "Tomorrow morning, but we need you to do something first." She slid a document across the table, a business meeting request, asking Marcus to come to a downtown office building to meet with potential investors. The address was actually an FBI field office. "You want me to lure him into a trap. We want you to schedule a legitimate business meeting. What happens after that is law enforcement." I signed the document and agreed to call Marcus that afternoon. The meeting was set for Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Marcus was excited about the opportunity to expand the business even further. "These investors are serious players," I told him. "International connections, deep pockets. Exactly what we need to take things to the next level." "How did you find them?" "Through my engineering contacts. Word gets around about successful ventures." Marcus bought the story completely. Why wouldn't he? In his mind, I was the naive partner who'd signed over his life savings without asking questions, the trusting brother who'd handed over his house and his wife without a fight. Wednesday evening, I had dinner with Lauren and Marcus one last time. Lauren had prepared the roast she'd promised, and we ate in the dining room like a normal family. She talked about baby preparations, nursery decorations, names for their daughter. Marcus talked about business expansion, international opportunities, the bright future ahead of them. Neither of them had any idea what was coming. "I have something to tell you both," I said over dessert. They looked at me expectantly, probably hoping I'd announce my intention to move across the country or remarry or somehow make their lives even easier. "I know about the insurance policy." Lauren's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Marcus continued chewing, but his eyes went alert. "What insurance policy?" Lauren asked. "The life insurance policy you changed 8 months ago, before the affair supposedly started, before any of this began." The dining room went quiet except for the grandfather clock in the hallway. Lauren set down her fork and folded her hands in her lap. "David, I can explain." "I'm sure you can. Just like you explained the affair that happened on dates when Marcus never left town. Just like you explained the pregnancy that was planned weeks before you told me about it." Marcus leaned back in his chair, his salesman's smile fading. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you that I know the whole thing was a setup. The affair, the pregnancy, the house, everything. You planned it all." "That's ridiculous," Lauren said, but her voice was shaking. "Is it? Because I have text messages that say otherwise. I have credit card records that prove Marcus lied about his travel. I have bank documents showing you changed the insurance policy months before you claimed the affair started." Marcus stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "You've been spying on us." "I've been protecting myself from people who wanted me gone." "Gone?" Lauren's voice was barely a whisper. $2 million in life insurance, Lauren. That's a lot of motivation to arrange an accident." She started crying then, real tears this time. Not the calculated emotion she'd shown during her confession, but genuine fear. "We never wanted to hurt you," she said. "You just wanted me out of the way." Marcus moved toward the kitchen, probably thinking about the back door. I didn't try to stop him. Where was he going to go? The FBI would pick him up within hours. "The business loan was part of it too, wasn't it?" I continued. "Get me to sign for $300,000, then default on the payments. Force me into bankruptcy, maybe push me towards something desperate." "It wasn't like that," Marcus said from the doorway. "Then what was it like?" He didn't answer. Couldn't answer, because there was no version of this story that didn't make them look like predators. I stood up from the table and walked to the front door. "I'm going home now. To my real home, my apartment." "David, wait," Lauren called after me. I turned back to look at her. This woman I'd loved for 12 years, sitting in my grandfather's dining room, pregnant with my brother's child, surrounded by the life she'd stolen from me. "The rental agreement expires at the end of the month," I said. "You'll need to find somewhere else to live." "You can't just throw us out." "I'm not throwing you out. The lease is expiring. That's how rental agreements work." I left them there and drove back to my apartment, feeling something like peace for the first time in months. Tomorrow, Marcus would be arrested. The business loan would be frozen. The house would revert to my control. Lauren would be alone, pregnant, with nowhere to go and no money to get there. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was a start. My phone rang at 6 a.m. Thursday morning. Agent Chen. "We have him," she said. "Marcus is in custody. The arrest went smoothly." "What happens now?" "Now we process him through the system. Arraignment, bail hearing, trial preparation. He'll be tied up in legal proceedings for months." "And the money?" "Frozen pending investigation. What's left of it anyway. He spent most of the loan on his criminal activities." I thanked Agent Chen and got ready for work. It was going to be a good day. At noon, I got a call from Lauren. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. "They arrested Marcus," she managed to say between sobs. "I heard. David, I need help. I don't know what to do." "You could start by finding a job." "I'm pregnant. Who's going to hire a pregnant woman with no references?" "That's not my problem anymore." "Please, I know I hurt you, but I'm scared. I don't have anywhere to go." I was quiet for a long moment, listening to her cry. Part of me, the part that had loved her for over a decade, wanted to help, wanted to forgive and forget, and pretend none of this had happened. But that part was smaller now, overwhelmed by the part that remembered her text messages, her insurance policy changes, her carefully planned betrayal. "You should have thought about that before you decided to destroy my life," I said, and hung up. The eviction notice was served on November 1st, exactly 30 days after I'd terminated the rental agreement. I wasn't there to see it, but my security cameras captured everything. The sheriff's deputy at the front door, Lauren's shocked expression, the official papers that gave her 72 hours to vacate the premises. She called me 17 times that day. I didn't answer. On November 3rd, I drove to the house to reclaim my property. Lauren was gone, but she'd left the place in good condition. Clean, organized, with a note on the kitchen counter. David, I'm sorry for everything. I know you'll never forgive me, but I want you to know that I did love you. I still do. I made terrible choices, and I'm paying for them now. I hope someday you can find peace. Lauren. I crumpled up the note and threw it away. The house felt different now. Smaller somehow, like it had been holding its breath for months and could finally exhale. I walked through the rooms, remembering what they'd looked like before Lauren and Marcus had redecorated them. My grandfather's house, my father's house, my house. I spent the weekend moving back in, reclaiming the space that had always been mine. The workshop, the kitchen, the bedroom where Lauren and I had slept for 5 years. Everything was exactly where I'd left it, but nothing felt the same. Monday morning, I got a call from my lawyer. David, we need to talk about the divorce proceedings. What about them? Lauren's attorney is claiming abandonment. Says you forced her out of the marital home while she was pregnant. She was living there under a rental agreement that expired. That's not how they're spinning it. They're also claiming you used your business connections to frame Marcus for financial crimes. I laughed. Actually laughed. Frame him? Jim, the man was laundering money for organized crime figures. The FBI has $2 million in documented evidence. I know that. You know that. But Lauren's attorney is good at creating reasonable doubt. What do they want? Half of everything. The house, your retirement accounts, spousal support until the child turns 18. The child that isn't mine. Doesn't matter. You were married when she conceived, so legally you're presumed to be the father unless proven otherwise. Then we'll prove otherwise. DNA test? DNA test. The legal proceedings dragged on through the winter. Lauren had found a small apartment across town and a part-time job at a real estate office. She looked tired whenever I saw her at court hearings, worn down by months of stress and uncertainty. Marcus was still in federal custody, awaiting trial on multiple felony charges. His bail had been set at $500,000, money he didn't have and couldn't raise. The business loan had been completely recovered by the FBI, leaving him with nothing but legal bills and prison time. In February, Lauren gave birth to a daughter, Grace, just like she'd planned. The DNA test confirmed what everyone already knew. Marcus was the father, not me. The divorce proceedings moved forward with that question finally settled. I didn't see the baby, didn't want to. Grace Orrin was innocent in all this, but she was also a reminder of everything that had gone wrong. Maybe someday I'd be able to look at her without feeling anger, but that day hadn't come yet. The final divorce decree was signed in March. Lauren got her personal belongings and half of our joint savings account, about $12,000. I kept the house, my retirement accounts, and my business assets. She also kept full custody of Grace, which was exactly what I wanted. This is it, Jim said, sliding the papers across his desk. You're officially a free man. How do you feel? He asked. I thought about it for a moment. Tired. That's normal. Divorce is exhausting, even when you win. Did I win? You kept your house, your money, and your dignity. Your ex-wife is a single mother working part-time for minimum wage. Your brother-in-law is going to federal prison. I'd call that a win. Maybe he was right, but winning didn't feel the way I'd expected it to feel. There was no satisfaction, no sense of justice served, just emptiness where my old life used to be. I drove home to the house that was finally completely mine again, sat in the kitchen where Lauren had told me about her pregnancy, where Marcus had demanded my property, where we'd shared our last dinner as a family. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 6 times. Time for dinner, but I wasn't hungry. Time to call friends, but I didn't have the energy for conversation. Time to move on with my life, but I wasn't sure what that looked like anymore. I walked out to my workshop and sat at the drafting table where I'd planned my revenge. The space where I'd solved the problem of Lauren and Marcus like it was just another engineering challenge. Force, leverage, load-bearing capacity. Every structure had weak points. You just had to know where to apply pressure. I'd applied pressure in all the right places. Used their greed against them, their arrogance, their assumption that I was too nice or too stupid to fight back. I'd given them exactly what they wanted and watched them destroy themselves with it. Lauren was alone, broke, and struggling to raise a child whose father was in federal prison. Marcus was facing 15 to 20 years for financial crimes. They'd lost everything they'd tried to steal from me, and more. It should have felt like justice. Instead, it just felt like the end of something that had died a long time ago. I opened the desk drawer and pulled out the original deed to the house, the one my grandfather had signed in 1952. Solid, permanent, unbreakable. The kind of foundation you could build a life on. Tomorrow, I'd start building again. Not the same life I'd had before, but something new. Something that belonged only to me. Tonight, I'd sit in my workshop and listen to the silence. The silence of a house that was finally at peace. The silence of a man who'd won a war he'd never wanted to fight. The silence of justice served, one carefully planned step at a time. Outside, it started to rain. I could hear it drumming against the workshop windows, washing away the last traces of winter, preparing the ground for whatever came next. I sat there until midnight, listening to the rain and thinking about second chances, about the difference between revenge and justice, about the price of betrayal and the cost of forgiveness. When I finally went inside, I locked the workshop door behind me and walked through my house, my grandfather's house, my father's house, my house, turning off lights and checking locks. In the morning, I'd wake up in my own bed, in my own home, surrounded by my own life. Lauren and Marcus would wake up to the consequences of their choices, the future they'd built with lies and greed and betrayal. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was enough. The rain continued through the night, steady and